Hey guys, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I am doing some pantry meals. All of this stuff came from my pantry. I was trying not to spend a lot of money last week, so these are meals that I had everything already in the house. So I'm going to show you what I made real quick and I hope you enjoy. If you've been around here, you'll know a couple weeks ago I made a cheeseburger gnocchi that I found online. It ended up tasting like taco gnocchi. So this time I decided I wanted to do an actual taco gnocchi. I had everything for it. So I went ahead and just chopped up half of a yellow onion, and then over to my skillet I added 1 pound of ground beef, also adding that onion in there, and I'm gonna let these cook in here together. While my ground beef was cooking, I got some water boiling on my back burner here and went ahead and started on my gnocchi. You will know it's done when it is all floating to the top. It only takes a few minutes to cook, so just keep a close eye on that. Once the ground beef is done, make sure you drain off any grease that there may be, and then I'm adding in 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a couple shakes of black pepper. I'm just going to mix that together, let that garlic cook for another minute or so, and then we'll continue on with that. Like I said, when your gnocchi is floating to the top, go ahead and drain that and just set it aside for right now. Now back over to my ground beef, I'm adding in 1 can of diced tomatoes with green chilies. I did not drain that. 1 can of drained and rinsed black beans. A 1/2 cup of frozen corn. If you want to add more corn, you totally can. I just do not like a lot of frozen corn in my meals, but I had it and I figured why not use it. And you will also need to add 1 package of taco seasoning. I probably added 3 to 4 tablespoons for myself since I used the big container. Go ahead and just let that cook on your stove for a few minutes until all of the liquid has disappeared. That should only take 2 to 3 minutes. Now I'm adding a 1/4 cup of salsa. Mine was just a mild salsa, and this might seem weird, but I'm adding in some blended cottage cheese. If you don't have blended cottage cheese, you can just use sour cream. I added about a 1/4 to a 1/2 cup of that. This is just going to make it a lot creamier. But the reason I used blended cottage cheese, I already had it in my refrigerator. I use cottage cheese and blended cottage cheese for my lunches all the time. But also that cottage cheese is going to make this have more protein in it. And honestly, this meal was so filling in the end. I really liked using the blended cottage cheese in here. And B, I also didn't have that much sour cream left and I wanted to be able to add that over the top, so I figured I would use the cottage cheese to mix in for the creaminess. Next, go ahead and add in your gnocchi and then mix this all together super duper well. And of course, to top it off, I'm just adding on some shredded Mexican style cheese over the top. I did add probably about a cup over the top. And then I'm just going to add the lid, let this melt down for about 10 minutes. Here is what my finished plate looked like. I'm so sorry it was so dark in here. It was kind of getting late this night. As you can see over the top, I did end up adding a little bit more sour cream in there, and I also added some Diablo hot sauce over the top. This turned out really, really good. Definitely better than the last recipe that was supposed to be cheeseburger, but tasted like taco gnocchi. This was extremely filling, very, very delicious, and we actually ended up having leftovers for the next day. Next up, we're gonna make these super simple pita bread pizzas. You can pretty much make pizzas out of anything that you have, but this is what I made on this night just because my husband worked all day and I was not feeling the best, but I wasn't gonna make him cook after working all day. So I decided we were just going to have some simple little pizzas. I preheated my oven to 375 degrees. I had these 2 little pitas in the fridge, and I also had a jar of marinara sauce that was already open, so I went ahead and added that marinara over top of my pita bread. I also added a little bit of garlic powder and oregano over top of both of these just to add more flavor. And of course, couldn't forget my red pepper flakes. We love a little bit of spice. And then as I looked in the fridge to get cheese to make these little pita bread pizzas, I realized I didn't have any mozzarella cheese, so I ended up using some sharp cheddar cheese. That might be weird to some people, but honestly it tasted just fine and we both loved it anyways. I piled those high with that cheese, and then I also didn't have anything like pepperoni or anything like that, so I went ahead and just kept one a cheese pizza, and the other one I added on some jalapenos. I actually really love making pizzas out of naan bread, so that's kind of where this idea came from anyways. But I just stuck these in the oven for 7 to 8 minutes, let those cook, and the crust got really nice and crispy, and the cheese melted super nicely. A lot of times when I'm making pantry meals, I go straight to some type of taco recipe or some type of pizza recipe. Can't help it, those are two of my most favorite things. So that's kind of why I made this and why I made the taco gnocchi before this. But this was so easy, took hardly any time. And on the side with this, I actually just ate some sliced cucumber with ranch. I'd also love to know, when you do pantry meals, what is your go-to item that you always like to make? For being a pantry meal, this meal turned out so good, and it was perfect for a Sunday night meal. My inspiration for this meal was the fact that I had 800 of these random potatoes, and I had some pork chops that had been in my freezer for quite some time. To start off, I went ahead and preheated my oven to 350 degrees. And then now over to my pork chop station, I added 1 egg into this little container. I beat that really well, and then over to my other container, I'm adding a 1/2 cup of plain breadcrumbs, about 1/3 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, around 1 teaspoon of salt, and about a 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano. At this point, I'm just going to mix this all together and break apart all of the Parmesan cheese that was sticking together. Now, actually getting started with the pork chops, I had 4 boneless pork chops. I would say they were about medium thickness. I added that into my egg and made sure it was covered on both sides and on the actual sides of the pork chop. And then I just pressed that down into my breadcrumb and cheese mixture a couple times and patted that breading into it as best as I could. Again, make sure you get this on all sides, and I would flip it around a couple times, make sure you get it breaded really well, and then you'll just repeat that with the rest of them. Once that was done, I went ahead and heated up a couple tablespoons of olive oil over in my skillet. And now I'm going to cook these over a high heat on each side for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. Basically right now I'm just trying to brown up the sides and get them a little bit crispy. I am not trying to cook them all the way through. Now that they have some color, I'm just going to add them over to my prepared baking sheet, and I'm going to start the other set of pork chops. Now that these are all browned up, they're going in the oven to bake for about 10 to 12 minutes until they're cooked all the way through. So with this meal, I also decided that I was going to take all of those random potatoes that I had and make the cream cheese potatoes I shared a couple weeks ago. I kind of just made these up one night when I didn't know what to make as a side, and they're now one of our favorites, so I figured I'd go ahead and share them again. Last time I did use some yellow or golden potatoes. This time I'm using some baby red potatoes and some russet potatoes. I just decided to use both and get them out of my cabinet. For the red potatoes, some of them are small enough I'm just leaving whole and just cutting off any bad pieces. But for the rest of the potatoes, I am going to make sure I cut those into smaller pieces and try to get everything to be about the same size so that they all cook evenly. I added those into some boiling salted water and I let those cook for about 10 minutes until they were fork tender. While those were boiling, I went ahead and started in on my cream cheese sauce. So this is going to look a little bit funky, but I'm taking 3 ounces of softened cream cheese and 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I melted the butter down and you're just going to whisk these together until they come together in a nice, smooth, creamy sauce. It's going to look funny at first, just keep whisking it together and eventually it'll start to look like this. Once my potatoes were done, I did just go ahead and drain those off and brought them back over to the stovetop. At this point, go ahead and mix in that cream cheese and butter, but while you're mixing, make sure you're not just mixing really quickly. Fold that cream cheese mixture in with the potatoes. That way you're not breaking the potatoes up because we want these potatoes to stay in whole pieces, not become mashed potatoes. And now to season these potatoes, I'm adding about a 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And then I'm just salt and peppering to taste. I feel like everybody likes a certain amount of salt and pepper, so just add a little and start from there. And about a 1/2 teaspoon of parsley. Next, I'm adding about 1/4 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. If you want to add more, please feel free to do so. Here's my pork chops coming out of the oven. They looked so beautiful. And then this is what our finished plates look like. I did just make some green beans as well. I cooked those with some butter, salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And honestly, for a pantry meal, this meal turned out so nice, so filling, so comforting. And I really do hope you try those potatoes if you haven't already. They're delicious. Thanks so much for watching today. If you haven't already, leave me a flower down in the comments below to let me know that you've made it all the way through this video. And also, I just wanted to say thanks for being here. I'll see you guys back here next Wednesday with a new video. Bye guys!